Welcome to Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. I'm your host, Kim Todd, and on Digging Deeper, we have in-depth discussions with extension and industry experts about those important landscape topics. Tonight, we are talking about vegetables. Thank you for joining us once again for Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. 68 years ago, Backyard Farmer was founded on answering our audience's questions. Most of them were about how to properly grow a vegetable garden. For today's program, we're returning to those roots. We're going to talk about growing pretty unusual vegetables with John Porter. So John, we're going to talk about some of the common ones. We're going to talk about some of the uncommon ones. We're going to talk a little bit about it's middle of August. We've started talking about fall gardening on Backyard Farmer.
Right.
And I know you're getting a lot of questions in the extension offices about fall gardening. So where do you want to start?
Well, we can start about, all the fun stuff, maybe.
Let's start with the fun stuff.
Let's start with the fun stuff, some unusual stuff, where we grow tomatoes by the ton and corn and beans and all that stuff. But I thought we could talk about some of the fun stuff that, I grew a lot of fun stuff in my garden this year. A lot of people like to try stuff, and maybe even like this year, the seed racks in the garden centers, they ran out of stuff because everyone wanted to garden. It was like all those weird things left over at the end that no one knew what to grow. So maybe you grew some of those, and so we can talk about some of the fun stuff.
That's perfect. So pick one out and let's talk about it. Let's pick that yellow thing.
Let's pick this yellow thing. So here are the yellow things. These, something that I've had the seeds for and I just wanted to try. I wanted to grow the regular version, but didn't have seeds early on in the season because I didn't have any, and there weren't any at the store. This is a cucumber. And most people are used to seeing cucumbers, and they're green and they're long and cylindrical. These are lemon cucumbers. Sometimes people call them like not 8-ball, but like ball cucumbers. They're round. It's very interesting. My first time growing them, but you can see how bright and vibrant yellow they are. I'm trying to figure out if this is just ripe or if it's overripe. Because most people don't realize that some of the stuff that we harvest, like a green cucumber, is in an immature form. We get it before it matures. If you were to let it go to full maturity, it's actually going to turn, it'll be really big and really yellow or turn orange. And so this sort of put me off a little bit, trying to figure out if this is too ripe. It's not, but an overripe regular cucumber would be about this color, but
big old fat thing that wouldn't really taste very good.
Yeah, they don't taste very good once they get to that mature.
Yeah. So, we've had audience members ask us about cucumbers being bitter. Have you had that experience with these? And a wonderful one of our viewers said, if you soak them in salt water, cut the end and soak them in salt water, then you lose the bitterness. Any bitterness in these, or do they taste like a lemon?
They don't taste like a lemon. They do taste like a cucumber. And they weren't really all that bitter. Actually, what I can do, I came prepared.
Of course. With a knife.
With a knife, right? So we can just, slice it open here.
It looks more like a little squash.
It does look like, we'll have to clean that later.
Until you cut it open.
Yeah.
And then it's seeded. They're all
so
seeded.
there are bigger seeds in there.
Yeah.
But it's really fun. If you want something to try, you can give it a try. I did wash this knife beforehand. If you want,
take a bite.
If you want a sample.
Take a slice. Yeah, perfect. So there we go. So
that's fun. And the fun thing about these is that they're almost, they can get a little bit bigger. And so I've seen people pickle these and they just stack them up in the jar. Yeah. And then you have like 1 or 2 pickles that you just sit on the sandwich. So it's
nice.
full size.
They're bigger. Yeah.
So it definitely smells cucumber.
Smells like a cucumber.
Yeah. There you go.
Pretty good.
Yeah. So that was something, a little fun that I've tried. The other thing that is becoming really popular is called a Mexican sour gherkin. It's a tiny little, people call them cucamelons. They look like little tiny watermelons. They're related to cucumbers, but they're really sour. And so people with kids especially like to grow those because they're really fun, really bite-sized, and they're like eating sour candy.
Oh, nice.
Right. And you can pickle those too. I've heard they make like a great garnish substitute for like martinis or Bloody Marys.
Perfect. And then you've got a bean that looks like it got sat on.
Right. So one of my favorite beans, this is actually an Italian flat bean. This is what I grow. It's called Roma. And this is what I grow for green beans mainly. And so this is really fun. The nice thing about these is they're very big, so you don't have to pick a lot of them for like
a meal.
A meal, right? You know, or from West Virginia we call it a mess. It's a mess of beans. But also, you know, they just snap right up, and you know, it doesn't take long to get enough to eat a meal. And I think they're some of the best tasting beans I've ever had. So those are Romas.
And you eat them the whole pod. You don't.
Yep, they're a green bean. So just like if you're growing Blue Lakes or a pole bean or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's something, and I found these locally. That was one of them that didn't sell out because most people look for those.
Right, the
you know,
old fashioned, the Blue Lake or the narrow beans. Are these a bush type?
They are bush.
A bush type.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the issues that I had that a lot of people have had this year with my beans and my tomatoes, it's been so hot. Like they started producing early on, and then it got really hot, and that actually stops pollen production and stops the fruits from maturing. So they took a break.
A long break.
Right. So I had like one mess of beans, and now they've sort of been a few weeks before I've gotten any more. But I finally
You're
starting to get more.
Some.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. All right, and then you have okra, and we had this in our backyard farmer garden, I think last year.
Yeah.
This particular okra.
Yeah, so this is an okra, so common in Creole, some African dishes. So if you've never had okra before, it is sort of an acquired taste. And it's an ingredient in gumbo, and what it does in gumbo is you slice it up, you take out the seeds usually, and it has it's a mucilaginous, so it's really slimy if you just like cut it open and eat it. But when you put it in gumbo, what happens is that is the thickener. So that's one of the thickeners that goes in gumbo. So that's really fun. So I have some okra growing in the garden. This is the variety is Bulldog, which is a short variety. Sometimes they get like 6-7 feet tall.
Right.
This one is about 3 feet tall, which is really fun. But the fun thing about it, and it sort of wilted on the way here.
Let's see if we can get this out without losing all your...
upsetting everything else. And this one got away from me. I didn't realize. Oop, there we go. This one is way too big. That one won't be good eating.
Oh, but it's so pretty.
It is so pretty.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting plant. It's a really pretty plant. It has these red veins, red stems. And unfortunately, the flower is not open, but it's almost looks like a hibiscus kind of flower. It's a big white. So this plant, like a 3 to 4 foot tall plant, this would look perfectly fine in a landscape.
Totally, and it is related to hibiscus.
Yeah, so it's in that family.
Yeah, so, and is this is candle, or there's a name, candle something or other? It is the taller one like that.
Yeah, so there's like really big tall ones.
Yeah.
This one is actually a container variety. So
nice.
That's exciting. This one may or may not be too. Usually if they get really big, they turn really hard. This one doesn't feel like it, so it might be edible. If it gets too mature and gets hard, you can use it as a weapon. It's like a dagger.
Okay. Excellent. Well, we want to make sure you watch us and give us all your feedback. Facebook is a great place to watch us. We're on, you can watch us and get to us through Backyard Farmer or through NET. We want all your comments. We want to make sure that if we are going to dig deep, we're digging deeper about things that you really want to hear about. And it's a lot of fun to have our audience see us in action when we have more than just questions and little segments. So
when we can just talk about random things.
We can. We could just, begin talking about, I don't know, sports.
Well, there's none of that this year. No.
All right, so there's the okra. So what else did you bring, John, that's either unusual or at least interesting to talk about? Let me ask you one more question about the okra.
Okay.
Have you ever tried it pickled?
I've not had pickled okra. I'll have to have that. I've had it
Yes.
fried.
Yes, fried is good, grilled is good, pickled is excellent. You have to get past the...
The sliminess.
No, it's not slimy.
Okay.
It's sort of prickly.
Okay.
You got a little fuzz on your tongue from the outside of the little okra, but it's very
Okay.
good. Yeah. All right. So now, what else did we bring?
Well, I brought a little basil. That's not too exciting, except for this one is a Thai basil, and of course it's wilty, but it's a nice different type of basil. The thing I wanted to point out, though, was this one I let go to flower. I had to fight the pollinators off of this. And so what I wanted to sort of talk about with these two herbs I brought, and I brought another one, is that sometimes they can have more than one purpose. So we eat this basil, but it makes an excellent pollinator plant. It's one of their, like, they love herbs. All kinds of little bees and things are all over most of the herbs. So that's what I wanted to point out. The other one that I brought, and this is a little teeny tiny portion of it.
Exactly.
So this is fennel, and this is the bloom of the fennel. So this is from a plant that I let go. So usually this bulb fennel, when it's younger, you can harvest it and it has that really nice compact bulb that you slice up. Fennel is common in a lot of Italian foods, and so that's the bulb fennel. This basically it bolted, so it went to flower, and it's probably 5 to 6 feet tall in the garden. Another one, I had to fight the bees and wasps, little tiny wasps and all that off of it. I mean, it was totally covered with that. But one of the things that will happen now is that now that I have flowers, I can harvest fennel seeds.
Right.
Which is another, so it's sort of like one of those bonus things. You know, you harvest most of it when it's young to do the bulb, and you know, you saute it up or add it to a sauce or something. And now I'll have the fennel seeds, which are also very common in Italian cooking. You might find them a lot in Italian sausages or Italian sauces, those little sort of like licoricey tasting. That's what the taste is.
Right.
And I love it. I love adding it to Italian stuff. So I let these sort of go to flower so I can collect the seeds.
Well, and doesn't fennel reseed itself pretty aggressively? Not quite as aggressively as dill, but
Yeah.
it can. So if you're lucky and you get it started once, you might have it again. Maybe
Yes.
not where you want it.
Right. Many happy returns on those.
Exactly.
So yeah, we'll
Yeah.
probably have plenty in the garden for
Exactly.
years to come.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a beautiful plant. I mean, it's got
is.
a great texture. So you've got the bold texture, you've got edible things, the basils. Again, people can get basils in all different flavors. And I know that one of our master gardeners one year, her basils went to flower. She infused vinegar. So she had it was really a pretty jar. It had the flowers of the basil in the vinegar jar.
Oh yeah, there's many.
Yeah.
There's a cinnamon basil, there's Thai basil, there's all kinds of flavors. So it's really fun to experiment.
Exactly. All right, so if people want to experiment, it's probably a little late this fall, but let's talk about what still can happen in the fall, but what should they do, especially if they're a first-time gardener or new to unusual? What should they do now so they can do it next year?
Right. So in the fall, we do have fall gardening, and you could still do like the leafy greens and root vegetables like turnips, beets, carrots, that kind of stuff. And garlic, you'll plant garlic mid-October. I tell people to plant it when you need it for Halloween for the vampires. That's the way to remember. But if you're not going to do that, we have a lot of first-time gardeners or returning to gardeners this year. So what do you do in the fall? So that's cleaning up all the stuff from the garden, all the, tomato plants and all those plants that could have had diseases. You want them out. So you want to remove those.
And not in the compost.
And not in the compost if they have disease. That's one of my struggles. We were doing so well, I didn't have a drop of any disease in the garden. And then we got that week of like the nice cool temperatures with the dampness, and now it's like disease everywhere in the garden. That can't go in the compost. So clean that up, take everything out. You can add compost, add some amendments to the soil. It's also a good time to soil test. And the reason being is that you can soil test in the fall and do any amending that you need. Maybe not the nitrogen, which is like it goes away quickly, but if you want to add compost or other fertility, it's a good time to do that. Then one of the worst things you can do for your vegetable garden is leave the soil naked. You don't want to leave the soil naked. So we prefer that you think about a cover crop if you're not doing like I have some beds that will have vegetables on them until they're killed by winter.
Sure.
But cover crops, you'll want to think like ryegrass, some of those oats, some of those winter grasses, or do at least a mulch on it. Cover it with shredded leaves or straw or something so that you can protect that soil from erosion over the winter. Those are some of the big steps that you want to take.
Right. So if people do want to get a soil test, where and how do they do that?
So there are labs all across the state in different cities. I know in Omaha we have Midwest Labs. We send people there. I know there's a lab or two here in Lincoln, and there's a few others across the state. So really it's about, connecting with your local extension office, and they can tell you where's the best for your area, because then you could, you can mail them in. Sometimes you can drop them off in person. But you definitely want to do that. And we recommend the labs versus the at-home kits, because those are so variable. And also the soil types that we have require different tests to get the right test. So that one that you buy at the home garden center is like the very general that isn't great for any soil. Right. So that's what you would do is contact your local extension office. They can tell you where to go locally.
Excellent. All right. So in the era of catalogs, real ones, they always came in, November, December, January. And of course, gardeners immediately went through and figured out so you could rapidly order seeds. Is the online ordering of seeds starting earlier, or should people expect, okay, it's close to Thanksgiving, it's October, we better be ordering seeds for spring? What are you going to tell people about that?
I would probably tell people now to order as early as you can.
Yeah.
You're right. A lot of times it would be, sometimes it was January, like I remember getting all these catalogs. I got, that was one thing that led me to gardening is we got all these gardening catalogs, and I would sit and plan my dream garden as a, 4 or 5 or 6 year old. So those usually came December, January. They've moved up a little bit, but now things have been, we have so many people gardening because of the pandemic, and I think that's going to continue. That seed companies, they sold out, they got behind on orders and took weeks to get orders out. So I would say order early.
Right.
Because we have the internet, you don't have to wait for the catalog.
Right. It is still, I think it's still more fun to sit there and pore through the catalog instead of scrolling through the computer. But so, and I suppose people should also be prepared with alternative selections. If they really, if they want the lemon cucumber, is there some other unusual cucumber, so that you don't necessarily say, well, to your ordering, wherever you're ordering, well, if I can't get that, I don't want anything. That's probably a better idea, I would think.
Yeah, I think, don't be set on that one thing, especially these days. It's like, that's how I ended up with some of the stuff I had in my garden. Like, I wasn't planning on using the lemon cucumber seeds that we sort of had as a, we got as a donation at the office to, give out to people because no one bought them from the company.
Sure, yeah.
And so, I think, be willing to try different things, have those old standbys, keep a record of what works well for you so that then you can go back and get it, but try new things because you never know, like with the Roma beans. My parents, we're from West Virginia, and there's this regional heirloom called Half Runner beans all over Appalachia. That's the only bean that exists in Appalachia. They're horrible. They taste good. They have a great taste, but they have to be strung. Like they're tiny little beans, and you have to sit and string all of them. Yeah. And I introduced them to Romas, and now they grow more Romas than they do half-runners, and it's like sacrilege. Like they're going against like the religion of Appalachia with these.
So there you are. That's one of the really good reasons to try something
Yes,
different.
you never know what you're going to find.
Exactly. Well, that is all the time we have for Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. And of course, we want to say thanks to John for coming in and sharing all that interesting expertise. We'll be back next time with another in-depth landscape discussion. Do be sure to watch Backyard Farmer every Thursday live at 7 p.m. Central on NET. Thanks for digging deeper with Backyard Farmer.